I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to talk about the non-neutrality thesis and what designers must do. Our lives are saturated with technologies. These technologies range from the simple, such as clothing, to the complex, such as airplanes. They may be firmly established, such as the refrigerators found in most homes. They may be new, like cryptocurrencies, which are much hyped but still rather niche. They may belong only in the future, like nuclear fusion power plants, which are currently being researched. They may only be conceptual or not even conceived yet. Nonetheless, the conduct of human life is so deeply intertwined with technological artifacts that we barely notice, though if they suddenly vanished, we would be paralyzed. The proof of this is how our lives grind to a halt during a power outage. Things we take for granted to work, such as the television or the lights, cease to do so, and we turn to earlier technologies such as matches and candles to light our way. In this way, technology is integral to our way of life, and its effects on the human condition is profound. This paper will consider the moral status of technology given its deep relation to the human condition. I will argue against the neutrality thesis, after which I will outline what more must designers of technologies do, given the moral status of technologies. Chapter 1. The Non-Neutrality Thesis. What is the moral status of technologies? Is technology morally neutral? Technological artifacts can be considered merely as instruments designed to carry out specific functions. If an instrument fulfills its function well, it is a good instrument. If not, a bad one. In itself, it is neither good nor bad. It is morally neutral. However, it can be used in good or bad ways, but such use depends on its user. That is the thrust of the neutrality thesis. On the other hand, technologies play an active role in shaping human behaviors and society, contributing to our actions and decisions. What the neutrality thesis does not consider is how technology mediates our moral decisions, our actions, and how we live. When technologies are used, they always help to shape the context in which they fulfill their function. They help to shape human actions and perceptions and create practices and new ways of living, asserts Verbeck. However, can artifacts be moral agents? Moral agents possess intentionality and freedom. Artifacts lack consciousness and hence possess neither. However, the relation between the user and his environment is mediated through artifacts. Technologies enable us to do things previously not possible, shaping our actions and our experience of the world. Our decisions and actions would have been different without these technologies. According to Verbeck, technological mediation is therefore a specific, material form of intentionality, and intentionality is always a hybrid affair, where men and artifacts co-shape decisions. Likewise, artifacts help to constitute freedom by providing the material environment in which human existence takes place. The association of man and artifact create the space for moral decision-making, making freedom also a hybrid affair. Freedom and agency hence reside in the man-artifact complex. Once we recognize the moral character of technologies and its role in helping us make decisions and impacting how we live, technology design then becomes a moral activity. How an artifact is designed shapes human decisions and practices. Designers materialize morality, they are doing ethics by other means, writes Verbeck. Technological mediations take place in the interaction between designers, users, and the technologies. 1. They occur during the intended use of the artifact, where the artifact is used in the way that it was designed to be used. 2. They also occur when artifacts are used in unforeseen or unintended ways. 3. Usage of artifacts give rise to side effects, which also need to be considered. Hence, Verbeek argues that the designer needs to imagine the ways an artifact can be used in all three modes. Ethics should deal with these mediations in a responsible way and try to help technologies with morally justifiable mediating capacities, he adds. Chapter 2. The Design Process. A typical design process for a product begins with product definition. In this phase, the designer works closely with the user to understand his needs and what he wants the artifact to do. The designer documents these user needs and expectations as user requirements, which are the behavior and characteristics the product must show to carry out its desired functions. He then translates these into technical specifications, transforming the user requirements into quantitative and measurable technical requirements. He is now ready for the next phase of conceptual design and detailed design, where design reviews will happen along the way so that the designer and the user can review the emerging design together. Throughout this process, the designer will need to clearly and unambiguously understand the intent of the user, including what he wants to use the product for, who the end user is, and how these end users will use it. Franson elaborates, part of the design task is to see to it that the customer needs, typically articulated vaguely and fragmentarily in non-technical language, has been translated correctly, that is, in line with the customer's intentions, into functional requirements that are delineated sharply enough to allow the setting of the design specifications. It belongs to the responsibility of a designer to understand why it is expected of a landmine under design that it is propelled 1 meter into the air before exploding. A designer must know, for example, whether an elevation of just half a meter or up to 2 meters. A designer must know, for example, whether an elevation of just half a meter or up to 2 meters would still do. Franson concludes that bad artifacts are artifacts that would be morally wrong to design. His argument takes the following steps. 1. States of affairs are brought about by our actions. 2. Bringing into existence an artifact is an action, with design a prior step leading to the existence of the design artifact. 3. The existence of a bad artifact leads to a bad state of affairs. Without the artifact, this new bad state of affairs would not have existed. 4. Since the artifact's existence is a crucial feature of this new state of affairs, bad artifacts should not be designed and brought into existence. 5. Since designers will understand the intent of the user well if they carry out the design process properly, they have a responsibility to decline to design a bad artifact and in that way not bring it into existence. Franson's paradigmatic example of a bad artifact is an instrument of torture, while for him, even the nuclear bomb built during the Second World War may be morally justifiable. Hence, based on his arguments, there will only be a small number of artifacts that will clearly be designated as bad and hence wrong to design. This seems to suggest that the moral responsibility of designers is likewise modest, but I want to argue that even for good artifacts, the designers still have moral responsibility to ensure certain values are embedded in their designs. Hence, a fortiori, for all artifacts, good, bad, or neutral, their designers have moral responsibility to ensure certain values are embedded in their designs. Chapter 3. Values in Design. Designers need to go beyond creating designs that merely fulfill user requirements to including values in their design considerations such as 1. Accessibility. The disabled, the poor, or the illiterate should be able to use the product if they fall within the potential user groups. 2. Sustainability. The product should be designed so that it can be maintained and/or repaired. Its material should be environmentally responsible, and sustainability should also be a consideration in the manufacturing process, for instance, to minimize waste of energy and raw materials. 3. Safety. Safety measures should be incorporated into the design, taking into consideration how users will use the artifact in intended and, as far as possible, unintended ways. Ideally, safety hazards are avoided altogether through good design. If this is not possible, then in order of decreasing effectiveness, the safety measures incorporated can be safety features or warning devices or signages, procedures, training, and use of personal protective equipment. Safety measures should also be revised by the designer for the safe manufacture, display, storage, disposal, including recycling, and other non-use situations. Other measures may include comprehensive costing, for instance, to include the cost of negative externalities from direct or side effects and environmental remediation. The choice of values depends on the values priced by the society. For instance, a society that values equality for right-handed and left-handed people will desire for artifacts to be designed such that they are as easy to use for both groups. Doors and their knobs, which currently favor right-handed people, will then need to be redesigned such that they can be opened with the same degree of ease with the left or right hand. Such a solution may include sliding doors which do not have the handedness problem, or removing the need to use hands at all, such as automatic doors. The solutions need not necessarily be technical. For instance, a society that values environmental sustainability might simply outlaw single-use plastics instead of trying to design artifacts using a biodegradable material. Hence, designers need to adopt a holistic systems approach in their design processes. In addition to fulfilling user requirements, they need to ensure that values that are important to their society are incorporated into their designs. In addition, and if necessary, they need to make recommendations to the stakeholders for how the product might have to be managed throughout its life cycle. Such a systems approach might be suitable to solve the current problems of recycling mobile electronics. Recycling centers have difficulties recycling such devices because they are often powered by lithium-ion batteries which catch fire easily. Previously, the batteries were replaceable and hence could be replaced and disposed separately from the device itself. In the quest for thinner and lighter mobile devices, batteries are now tightly integrated into the device's design and often come sealed into the device. Simply opening up such devices can cause the battery to catch fire because of a short circuit resulting from a breach of the separator between its positive and negative parts. Since such batteries have a lifespan of only a few years, customers are forced to replace the entire device in a kind of forced obsolescence. How can designers of such devices do better? They need to plan disposal and recycling procedures for the devices, even if these plans extend beyond the purview of their firm. It might involve creating new recycling centers if none exist, or providing existing ones with the right equipment to safely open the devices. The designers could also simply design the device such that the batteries can easily be removed, trading off the thinness and weight of the device. However, since it is costly for the design manufacturers to create and equip recycling centers, and since they also profit from forced obsolescence, they have little incentive to remedy the situation. They do not own the existing recycling centers, and hence the increased danger for those workers at the center from potential fires or the additional efforts and costs required by the centers to remove the batteries do not affect them. Clearly, not all the responsibility for the moral status of artifacts falls solely on the designers. Other responsible parties, including the manufacturers, other corporations such as the recycling centers in the example, the users, and importantly, policy makers and legislators, if the systems approach is extended to consider society at large as the system under analysis, policymakers and legislators have the responsibility to ensure that the values that their society hold dear be upheld through placing in place institutions, infrastructure, equipment, investments, education, training, personnel, and regulations to ensure that these values are embedded in product design on an artifactual and on a systems level. Laws, for instance, can be introduced to force design manufacturers to be responsible for any environmental remediation required from the life cycle usage of its products. Given how closely entwined human life is with technologies, and how technological artifacts mediate our moral decisions, designers need to realize the extent of their ethical responsibility when designing artifacts. They need to refuse to design morally bad artifacts to avoid bringing about bad state of affairs which arises from the existence of such artifacts. However, their responsibility does not stop there. For all artifacts, they also need to consider in their design values that are important to society. The society may be their immediate society of co-workers or countrymen, but may also be all of mankind. Climate change, for instance, may not alter his society of co-workers much, since they may already have passed away by the time of the environmental apocalypse, but the duty to all men and all life forms, including the yet-to-be-born, remains. Designers need to adopt a holistic systems approach, even if aspects of their plans and designs extend beyond their firm. Policymakers and legislators need to get involved to ensure these values are upheld on a product and societal level. Thank you.